We are back, and we are in part 2 of our wellness podcast episode with Samantha Aguilar. And we, if you wanted to listen to the first part, that will be available on our streaming service, Matters of Substance. So we're just we're getting right back into talking about self-care in recovery, and sobriety, and kind of what that looks like, wellness, recovery. Some people have their own definition of self-care. So we are going to go into a little bit more of not so much surface level. I think people only pay attention to the surface level of self-care, but Samantha is going to tell us more about that.
Yes, thank you. So, self-care is so much more than like a spa day. Okay. So I think self-care is creating healthy coping mechanisms and using tools that lead to a more fulfilling life. And if you look at it that way, well, that's a lot more than just like getting my nails done. So my self-care includes like a morning routine. And, sometimes I don't get it all done in the morning. So I focus on, can I get it done throughout the day? But, that includes like some form of exercise, even if it's only for like 5 minutes. Just something to get my body moving. It includes some type of meditation. You don't just have to sit there in silence. Maybe you listen to affirmations. Maybe your meditation is music. Maybe your meditation is something that it's completely different. I knit. Sometimes knitting's meditation. Journaling doesn't have to be like, oh, it's just for women. Or I get that a lot with people I work with. They think, it's not for men or it's not for them because they're not into it. Therapy, reading, healthy hobbies, healthy eating, and hygiene. So those are all forms of self-care for me. So if hygiene was the last thing I said, then we obviously know that there's a lot more going on. And I think it's important too because as you work on routines, like a sober routine is a really great tool for self-care, but, these build self-efficacy and responsibility. And, if you start doing things and you feel responsible and you're crossing them off your to-do list and you're showing yourself, like, look what I've done, it's going to build self-esteem and confidence. And that's like a big part of recovery is like recognizing that you can have like power and love for yourself. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to self-care than we think there is.
Yes, and I like the journal acknowledgement because, yes, journaling does not have to just be for a specific person. And something that is very helpful for me is if you struggle with just writing all of your own words, there are so many prompts or prompt journals or prompts you can find on Google or wherever that will kind of help you get into the writing. So you're not just having to think about something or, you can follow a prompt, and then over time it might come a little bit more natural to you. But also something else I talk about and kind of try to encourage is like something, I call it jotting, where I'm just like, no matter if I'm in a situation where maybe I don't have my journal or I don't have access to like a whole whatever, I'll take like any kind of writing utensil and just sort of jot down how I'm feeling in that moment. Like explain my whole feelings, like just in a few words. And it doesn't have to be all nice and like, on a line, just kind of scribble it down just to like, I don't know. It's something that works for me, especially if it's like something quick and I have to keep on going with about my business. But I come back to that later, either the next day or that night and say, okay, so what was going on? Why, what was happening? And just sort of so that I can remember that. And that helps me remember the situation. Maybe somebody said something to me I didn't like, or I had a reaction that I was used to doing from like childhood or like my teenage years, having those poor or, maybe not poor, but not the best reactions. And then I go back and review my little jots, and that's another form of journaling I think is important too. So.
Wow, I love that. That reminds me a lot of like, that's kind of like similar to some CBT exercises, where you write down how you felt and why and how you could react differently. That's similar to a daily personal inventory with a 12-step program. And it is really important because recognizing too, when you write those things down, it allows you to be like, oh, like I just feel this way. it's not like I have to have so much identity around it. Like I'm not an angry person, but I'm allowed to feel angry. So yeah, that is great.
So we talked a little bit before we started the show about the hierarchy of needs. So I don't know if everyone knows what that is, but it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At least that's the way I know it. And and so can you tell us how that comes into play for people who are like in recovery and these other facets of recovery and like their needs?
Yes, definitely. So I think it's important for active addiction as well as recovery because, oh man, there's so much stigma around addiction. And the more that the knowledge is out there of the hierarchy of needs, I think the more people can understand that, people in active addiction that don't have clothing and don't have housing and don't have food and don't have resources, they're not going to get clean. They're not able to hold a job. They're not able to go and be a productive member of society. They're not able to have like a spiritual development, And that hierarchy of needs is very important because I worked for a company and they were very big on providing resources. And I love that because it was so important of like recognizing, I can't expect this person to go into treatment when they don't have shampoo and they don't have shoes and they don't have clothes. I can't expect people to get out of treatment and stay clean when they don't have a home. They don't have money. They don't have food in their fridge, So recognizing like that hierarchy of needs is very important for active addiction and recovery. So if I'm going to begin to work on myself, okay, do I have my basic necessities? Okay, now I have those. I've reached out. I found a social worker. I found some adjunct in the community because there's so many great adjuncts now that can put you onto resources. Okay, now I can begin to work on personal development. And then when I work on personal development, now I can work on spiritual development. So yeah, that is really important because people want to just jump straight into like therapy, or they just want to jump into like, oh, I found this religion, but like, wait, can we tune in? Like, do I have my basic needs met? Okay, now do I have this met? Now do I have that met? Because there's a lot of like looking down on people for not being somewhere that we expect them to be. But like, what have we done for them? They don't have somewhere to live. They don't have food. They don't have shoes.
Exactly. And us people just saying, well, just go get sober or just stop. It's so frustrating. And yes, it's like, something I learned recently was we are not going to, it was more, we were talking like harm reduction. So people's,
watch out. Harm reduction.
Yeah, right. I know people have some strong beliefs on harm reduction. But it's like, if we tell somebody that they have a cancer diagnosis or they have diabetes, typically the doctor or whoever is working with the patient is not going to make them do the most extreme of measures first, right? You're not going to expect someone with diabetes to completely cut out carbs and sugar and completely change their eating habits. They have to take it one step at a time, and they have to do it slowly, and it's never going to be perfect. But so when we put this whole, oh, you need to go get sober and then things will, turn around for you. Well, but like Samantha said, they don't have anywhere to live. They don't have their shoes, they might not even have shoes. And we're expecting them to hold down a job so that they can pay for housing and, or to go to treatment when they have nowhere to go when they come out, and they have nothing to sustain them when they come out of recovery or out of, inpatient treatment. So why are we expecting people to take the most extreme of measures without first identifying like, okay, do they have transportation? Do they have shelter? Do they have food? Do they have access to, like we were talking about, hygiene and, making sure that we're able to brush our teeth and that we're not, we don't have some sort of infection like, on our foot or wherever from just not living in a habitable place. So why are we expecting people to, go into treatment and never experience a relapse and just stay sober for the rest of their lives and be on the right track when there's really not a whole lot that is helping them.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
how would you talk about people finding the resources that they may be looking for? Like I hear this all the time. We have resources here, but no one knows how to access them.
Oh my gosh. It's so common. It is common because there's a lot going on in the community, but it's really hard to like tap into them. And yeah, I feel like we're completely unrealistic when it comes to how we approach addiction and recovery because just expecting people to come out of treatment and things will get better. I call that toxic positivity. I love my affirmations and I think it's important, but like I don't lie to myself. Like I'm not just gonna be like, I'm happy and healthy. Like, no, what am I gonna do to become happy and healthy? So it's gonna take a lot of research to find those resources, and it's not easy. I know of a few places, and I regret to not plug them all because it's early. But I know there's that Recovery Cafe in Valpo at Living Hope Community Church, and I know they're offering a lot of resources for free. I know there's two of us so far that are doing yoga and workshops there. I know of a few naloxone boxes in the area. Sometimes you might have to call around to find them, but that's Narcan. I also know some places offer drug testing kits because harm reduction includes that. I know that there's Recovery Connections. There's 320 in Chesterton. So there are a lot of great options, but it is like, you kind of do have to ask around and figure it out because it's not easily accessible and known. But, I think a big part is the education. So, like I liked what we were talking about with like, people don't know. And so, when it comes to like self-care and when you get out of recovery, recognizing post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And that's like a big thing because first of all, we need to educate people on like, hey, you got clean. And first of all, we don't have these expectations of you because we can't. And second of all, sometimes pause takes a few years to go away. And that can be hard to come to terms with because, we get clean and we want to like go get a job and we want to do this and we want to do that. But, like we might have like symptoms of depression. We might be gaining weight. We might be lethargic. There's all these things that we have to understand. Like post-acute withdrawal is very important to address and then begin to take steps for recognizing like, hey, do you have the patience to understand this is going to take some time? Are we building those healthy coping mechanisms? Are we finding like breath work and support groups? And are we exercising? Because exercising, we talked a little bit about how it affects the prefrontal cortex. I'm like a health nut. So like as you exercise, your body releases brain-derived neurotropic factor. And BDNF is literally like brain food. So like you're growing that gray matter in your brain just by exercising. So like recognizing like there's a lot more than just like, there's endorphins and good hormones, no, your body survives off of some of the compounds that are released from exercising. There's healthy diet because that's a really big proponent of like your hormones and your mood and like understanding like you need to eat a balanced diet. I don't know about you when you're in active addiction, but I did not eat a balanced diet. I didn't even eat regularly. That's really important for pause. The support groups is very important, and meditation for like impulse control. And so these are all things that these sound just like, okay, whatever. But no, like that is how you work with post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And post-acute withdrawal syndrome, everybody experiences when they come out of recovery. And it depends on how much you used and what you used, how long those symptoms stand for. And then also like, are you taking those steps? Are you finding a therapist? So recognizing a lot of after recovery is dependent on those resources that we give people.
Yes. And it's so important to at least be aware of those things, because some people, they don't understand, why am I feeling like this? I'm clean now. Like my life, when you're in that pink cloud stage, things are good, but you still might experience, like you were talking about, weight gain, or even sometimes weight loss, lethargy. For me, it was just feeling so different physically. Like, and it took a while for my body to kind of come back to like a state of non mind or mood altering substance. Like it took a while for my body to be like, okay, like this is the new normal now.
Yeah,
like
that balance.
Yes. And it takes a while, and some people don't understand that, because I don't know how much of what you said is so helpful. I just don't know how much of it is like taught. Like when people are in detox isn't necessarily the place to like try to learn all of that. But if you follow up detox with maybe a 30 or 60-day inpatient stay, or maybe you do a partial hospitalization afterwards, speaking in a language that is easy to understand but empowers the person is so important. Why don't we talk more about what you're saying? Like everything you have said, I feel is so beneficial, and so it's rooted in just recovery and healing, but it's also like practical. Like, okay, exercise. Like that's not totally impossible to accomplish, but people don't realize the benefits, especially like in recovery. So I feel like there are a lot of missing things in, depending on where you go, or sometimes there are a lot of people who I think, maybe they go to detox, but then they just do everything themselves.
Yeah.
They don't go into treatment. They're just out, kind of living, or white knuckling it, and just, so even for people who didn't go into an inpatient place, the resources that are available outpatient and that you can use like right now, I think are so important. So I wanted to ask a little bit about peer recovery coaching, like, maybe the differences between that. Like if someone is wondering if, what's best for them, peer recovery coach, sponsorship, can you explain like maybe some of the differences?
Definitely. So I have noticed it depends on where you go, because not all of these things are taught. And I think it's very important for people like me and you, recovering addicts, to find these things so we can bring them out to the community, because, realistically, until treatment centers and doctors and therapists see how effective these things are, they're not going to do them. And I think the more that like we spread the word like this, like, hey, I'm 7 years clean, I'm 2 years clean, and this is what I do, and this is what works for me, and I've tried other things and they don't work. Like, I think that is a great way to kind of spread the word, because otherwise, people just think like, oh, I get out and I white knuckle it, like we need to become like advocates for recovery and like letting people know like, no, this is what I have to do, and it's not easy, but I do it. So yes, I think when it comes to peer recovery coaching though and sponsorship, they're different, and I think they're both very important, because sponsor somebody, if you work a 12-step program, you work on 12 steps. I think 12 steps are a great way to have free therapy, okay? Because there's a lot going on in those steps that you tune into, motives and all that. But I also think a recovery coach is important, because it's somebody who has access to resources. So I know I've worked for companies before that provide you with resources as your recovery coach. I work for an IOP program, and I think, well, personally I'm biased, but I think as a coach in IOP, I offer a lot of insight that maybe that IOP wouldn't offer if I wasn't there, or if another coach wasn't there. So I do think that having both would be really great. It's not easy, because IOP, it's only so long and then you get released. But I have heard of some companies and federally funded health centers in the area that, are beginning to provide those things. One company I know of, they're called HealthLink, and they offer, a free recovery coach program. So they'll offer a recovery coach to help you in recovery, but then they also offer resources and transportation, and I think they even have like legal help. They offer a lot of things. So those are just ones I know of. Like if you go out out into the recovery community and ask people, people know things. And, one thing I try and work on with people is a RAP plan. So it's kind of unofficially in recovery as a thing, but like an official RAP plan is really cool. And these are things that, you don't really work on with a sponsor. And these are things that a coach can offer because they have a little bit more training and they kind of know a little bit more how to talk to somebody without them feeling like they're wrong, like motivational interviewing and such. And so, I've noticed that there's a lot of things that they offer, like I would print out worksheets and do like relapse prevention plans and recognizing like why you did relapse and how you can learn from it and like some type of negative automatic thoughts. So going back to the RAP plan, this is something you could like write down right now and do yourself. Would be a really great thing if, you don't have those tools yet. Like, I think this is a great option. So it's a wellness recovery action plan, and it's 7 things that are kind of grouped together. I'm not sure where they stemmed from. I do know that it's pretty common in the recovery field. But so it starts off with a toolbox. So that's kind of what we talked about with self-care. It's, skills and strategies that are healthy coping mechanisms. And then you create a daily plan. So a way to bring these tools into action, and like how it looks and feels when you are well. So recognizing what does that look like so you can recognize when you're deviating from it. Everyday things that you can do. So these are things you do every single day to keep you well. And then particular things you can do like on special occasions or like maintenance, like weekly things. The next thing that it is stressors. So what are your stressors? Who, where, why? And what are the tools that you can use for them? So before you're in the stressor, recognizing what tool will work. And then from there, the warning signs. So those stressors, what do the warning signs that you are beginning to deviate from your recovery, that you're getting triggered? What does that look like for you? What does that feel like? Sometimes people notice like, oh, I'm feeling hot. I might be angry. Oh, I have a feeling in my gut. Oh, I think I'm nervous, things like that. And what are the tools that you can use now that you're in this warning sign area? And then from there, signs that things are getting worse. So a list of what that looks like, what it feels like, and then a concrete plan. So now that things are getting worse, you recognize maybe you're past some of those tools. Maybe you need therapy at this point. Maybe you need inpatient. Maybe you need to go somewhere. So this is a concrete plan of what I'm going to do when I notice things are about to hit the fan. And then from there, crisis mode. So what is your crisis mode looking like? And who will support you? What will support you? Where will support you? And how you can take that into account right now. So you're in crisis mode, look at your RAP plan. Okay, this is what I need to do. I need to go to this therapist. I need to go to this treatment center. I need to move to this place. And geographical changes do not make you clean. But maybe it is like, oh, I'm in an unsafe home environment. I need to go to this person's house where it is safe. And then after that, lastly, for the RAP plan would be a post-crisis. So navigating after the crisis, how can you return back to that daily plan? So, and then recognizing what did you learn? So maybe you learn new tools. Maybe you let go of a tool because it wasn't serving you like you thought it was. Maybe you found some new things. So that RAP plan is a really great way to tune in if you're on your own in recovery and you don't have that resource. Like that's something you can do on your own. I've done it on my own a few times, and it's like all encompassing, and I think it needs to be offered a lot more places, but I really don't see it.
Yeah, and that sounds like something that definitely, if I see the importance of that, and especially doing it like when obviously before you're in that mode, but like when you're doing well, when you're balanced, when you're having a good day or a good week and you're focused, having that mapped out and planned out, because it's not going to work if you try to put it together when you're in the middle of a crisis. Yes. It has to be something that you do before that happens, so that, because our minds.
We ran out of time, but you can hear more of this conversation at mattersofsubstance.libsyn.com. Libsyn is Libsyn.